I'm a senior advocate. I'm practicing in the Supreme Court in India. My father was born in Karachi, uh, in Pakistan, and my mother was born in Nairobi, Kenya. And they both traveled to India and they started practice at the Supreme Court. I'm the eldest of my three siblings, and we are all lawyers. And it's been a very, very exciting journey for me as a lawyer. And I'd like to share some of my experiences. First case which I did as a law student. And I would like to just say how I fell in love with law and have been practicing as a litigator since then. I just joined law college, and we had, along with five of my colleagues, had made the basketball team, the first women basketball team in law college. And we wanted to enter the intercollegiate basketball tournament, which was going to start. And we were told that, I'm sorry, you cannot enter the tournament because of some funny reason that they gave. So we were very disheartened. So I spoke to my lawyer colleagues and they said, no, of course you can. And let's go and take them to court. I said, why not? Let's take them to court. And we overnight prepared the petition. We moved the court. But the day we arrived in the court, there was a lawyer strike. And when you know in India, if there's a lawyer strike, lawyers cannot enter the courts. So it's the clients or the litigants themselves who have to go and appear in courts. So I was a little unnerved because I was not expecting that. But then with the good briefing of my lawyers, I went and appeared and we got a good order and we were able to participate in the intercollegiate basketball tournament. And of course, down the weeks, we came runners up in the tournament. So it was a real exciting time for us. And I realized that the confidence that was instilled in me since the childhood, the three of us, my parents were very progressive, sensitive, very positive people, individuals who instilled self-confidence in us right from our childhood and said that nothing was impossible. So I think that helped me, and that had been instilled in us right from our childhood. And we continued to carry that forward in our issues and in life. And that helped me when I was arguing the case as a law student. And, the most interesting part in our growing up years were our dinner table conversations, because as I mentioned, both my parents were lawyers practicing in the Supreme Court. And every time when they would come back, we would ask them, what happened in court today? They both actually started public interest litigation in India. And I would say both of them, and particularly my mother, was my role model, because the kind of passion, the kind of fire that was there in her to, fight the injustice, to fight the problems that the disadvantaged sections of society in India were facing. They were a team. My father would put together the petitions and my mother would go and argue them in court. And that passion was filtered down to me as well. And that's how I am in court, absolutely passionate and fiery and ready to take on the world. And they did cases like the under trial prisoners, where thousands and thousands of prisoners were languishing in jails. They, by one order, got 40,000 prisoners across the country released. Then came the case of the Bhagalpur blinding, where 33 prisoners were blinded by the police by pouring acid in their eyes, and hot iron rods were poked in. So that was the first case where compensation was given by the courts in India for the kind of act done by the police, the atrocities done by the police. Today, as we all eat iodized salt as a matter of right. I mean, that was a case which came up in the Supreme Court because because of contaminated, lack of iodine available in the iodine in the diet. People were suffering from goiter. That was a disease because of lack of iodine. So the Supreme Court ordered that all the states must produce iodized salt, as which we all eat now. Then there was these cases of the dowry deaths, the dowry victims, and they were not getting redressal at all. And so after the intervention of the Supreme Court, we were able to get special cells made in the police stations for women of dowry victims to get redressal immediately, which exists till now. When I started my profession, the first case which I had was also very, very interesting as well as emotionally traumatic, because there were these girl, a Muslim girl who had been married, but because she gave birth to a girl child, the girl child was killed on the same night, and she was sold off to a lady who ran a prosecution racket. And we couldn't find her, and the mother was frantic, and the in-laws had sold her off for an amount of 40,000 rupees, and we couldn't find her. And we looked around. The NGO which was involved in searching for her went around looking for her for 2 months. They couldn't find her. Then we moved a petition in the Supreme Court, in a habeas corpus petition, and that was my first case where I was appearing for the mother of the girl and trying to trace her. Ultimately, with the help of the Supreme Court, we were able to trace her from Haryana, and she was brought to the court, and she was a living vegetable. The fact that she had been used and misused times over, and it brought tears to my eyes when she was brought in by the lady police constable, because the court had asked for her production, and she could barely walk. She just was kind of dragged in by two lady constables, and but the thing was that the minute she saw her mother in court, she recognized her and she started crying, and the mother started crying, and I could see tears in the eyes of the judges. I could see tears in the eyes of my lawyer colleagues in the court. That story changed the way I started looking at law. That case particularly made me feel that I think a lot more needs to be done in our country, a lot more needs to be done in the legal profession. And you need to be very strong to do these kind of cases. You also have to have a very positive thought process in your mind to be able to take up in these cases. And it just so happened a year later, a similar case again was referred to me, where three girls were kidnapped by their cousins because they owned land in Haryana. They owned property in Haryana, and the cousins wanted that property. The father had given the property to these girls, but and the father had died. So two of them were gang raped by the cousins and their friends, and and they were missing. So again, we approached the Supreme Court. And while I was doing this particular matter, I got a call. In those days, we didn't have mobiles. We had landline phones, and I got a call from some minister and said, "Get off this case, otherwise we'll throw acid on your face." So for a moment that night, I was shaken. And when I mentioned this to my mother, she said, no, you're not appearing in this case. You're too young to be, to do this. And I don't want anybody throwing acid on you. I will appear in this matter tomorrow. It was the next day we had to be in court. So I said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to get cowed down by this kind of phone call. And I appeared and I mentioned to the court that this kind of phone call came through. And this is what said. I was said, and I was threatened, and the court took absolute cognizance of it at that point itself and ordered the gentleman to be produced in court. And it touched headlines that a minister had been summoned to the court in a case where he had made a threatening call. And so it was again a very, very interesting, traumatic case. We found these girls. We rehabilitated them with the help of an NGO, and later on got two of them married. So my journey in the initial years of law were with such hard cases, I would say, such traumatic cases. But then every time I was back in court, I had adrenaline pumped into me. I was ready to go and take on. Over the years, I've specialized in family law and custody cases, and I can tell you, every case which comes to me is a new case, a new story, a story of a battered woman, a shattered woman, physically, emotionally, financially. And it takes a lot out of, I think, any lawyer who does these kind of cases to counsel them, to talk to them, to give them the positive aspects of life, to look at life in a very positive manner rather than get drawn in by the kind of cases, the troubles that they face or the troubles that they go through. And I have had lots of girls who've come to me completely broken, do not want to live or do not even want to fight. But over the years, as they fight their own cases, they become strong. And by the time they have finished with their cases, they are ready to take on the world. And I find that so inspiring. Each of my clients, I find that lady is an inspiration for me. And I learn every day. And that's what I find so fascinating about this profession. The other aspect of my legal profession, which has been a very, very exciting part of it, was that I was always involved in elections. When I contested in the Supreme Court Bar Association for the post of the secretary, where no lady had ever been elected as a secretary of the bar, I got elected by one vote after 50 years of the conception of Supreme Court. And it was unbelievable for the men because it is a male dominated profession, as you all know. It was absolutely not acceptable to them that a young woman had got elected as the secretary of the association, and that too by one vote. The counting went on till 3 a.m, but at the end of the day, they had to declare me as the secretary. And believe me, it was a very, very difficult 1 year that I faced, because I was fighting male prejudices all the time, whether it was from the judiciary, whether it was from my colleagues at the bar, whether it was from clients. Even from clients, they felt, that it's, would she be able to do her cases or with due diligence as if she's now got involved in bar politics. But yes, it is a learning process. And the confidence, the one thing which I learned when I was the secretary of the bar, and this is what I tell all my young colleagues at the bar, is that a lot of people take you for granted. People expect that they can say anything to you and get away with you. You have to hold your own. You have to be able to tell them on their face what is right and what is wrong. You need to stand on your own, and you have to be able to take them on as and when required. I remember a story when my mother had told me, when we had just joined the profession, that somebody did not believe her when she gave a judgment and said, no, this judgment is bang on this case that they were discussing. And there were 3 lawyers sitting in the library and told her, no, you don't know anything. You have not understood it. And she won the case on the basis of that judgment. And she came back and threw the book on the table where they were sitting and said, see, this judgment, and this is where I've got the excellent order from the court. So there were stories, and there are still stories. It's fascinating to see how women in the legal profession have risen, have stood for themselves, have reached a point where now we have had the first additional Solicitor General appointed. We have women judges. As I progressed in my profession, and I did want to point out that the 3 or 4 points, mantras which I have followed, and I would like to share that with everybody. And I really feel they are very, very important when you, in any career, not only in the legal profession. The first one is, is self-confidence and self-respect. I think self-respect and self-confidence, it has to be instilled when you're young and when you're in your younger days, growing up days, and more so by your family, by your parents. This equality in the family, whether it's a boy or a girl, has to be maintained. And that's how you come out with very good boys, if they are instilled with respect for the girls in the family, or respect women in the family. The other thing which we realized, and when I was doing cases for the marginalized section of the society, like the lepers or for the mentally ill patients, I was amazed at the kind of faith they had in God, the kind of faith they had in the system, the judicial system. I realized these people who had hardly anything to live on, no medicines, no houses, they were struggling because there was no social legislative available in our country. But at the same time, the kind of faith they had was very inspiring. The third thing which I feel, and I have seen it across all careers, particularly the legal profession, is you have to work very hard. Women have to work harder than the others have to work. The men have to work. You have to be consistent. You have to learn to resolve problems very calmly. Your lawyer cannot lose his patience or cannot get angry. You have to be calm to be able to solve, because people come to you with problems. They are not medical problems, the problems of their heart and their mind. So you have to be very calm to resolve those problems. The the fourth thing which I feel, and I think this is something which everybody feels it, knows it, but somehow is not able to inculcate it in their systems, is happiness. You have to be happy from within to be able to share happiness or give happiness to people. So being happy is a state of mind, yes, it is, but at the same time, you have to inculcate it in your system. And I think it's always a pleasure to meet someone who smiles, who's smiling at you and says hello to you. But people, people somehow, you don't come across many people who meet you with a smile. And being smiling also helps you, is enhanced by the fact that if you're kind, you're helpful, you are thankful to God, thankful for everything that is around you, you feel blessed, and you're happy. And the final thing I would like to say is that, in as particularly in this pandemic, I have felt, and I think I've seen a lot of domestic violence during this pandemic. I have seen a lot of children going through psychological problems, and we've done a lot of counseling. We still are doing that, of course, virtually. Everything is working now virtually, but everybody likes to see a positive person around them, wants to talk to a person who's positive, who likes you to praise them and praise them generously. And also, people like to have a, a person who would tell you, even if there's the biggest problem in your life, that it will get resolved, things will get sorted out, don't worry. This word, don't worry, is very important in everybody's life when they're troubled. And it's nice to be a people's person. So I think, uh, having said this, these are the things which are my mantras in life. And I feel these are the mantras I would like to share with everyone. And I also would end by saying, we are what we are by the way we are brought up by our parents, by the atmosphere that we have in our house, so I would say that I am what I am today because of my parents, and I thank them for that. I'm blessed to be their daughter. Thank you.